Okay, welcome to another Mishnah, another class of the Mishnah. We're going to continue with the last part of chapter 1 of the Mishnah that we read. We didn't finish the last part. This is the last part of Barachot 1. It says, from the laws of the recitation of the Shema itself, the Shema proceeds to discuss the blessings recited in conjunction with the Shema. So we have the Shema, and if you look into your Sidur, there's something called Kiryat Shema or Kriyat Shema. Kriyat Shema. It usually comes before the blessings of the Shema in the morning portion and I think in the evening portion. So just look into your Sidur. You're not expected to know these things, how to follow them just like that. It's actually in the Sidur. Chazal, or the ancients of Israel, have made it easy for us. They are teaching us in the Mishnah, but they've made it easy for us to follow in terms of the prayer book. Thanks to Ezra for that. So it says, from the laws of recitation of Shema itself, the Shema, the Mishnah proceeds to discuss the blessing recited in conjunction of the Shema. Here the order is established. In the morning, when reciting Shema, one recites two blessings beforehand. The first on the radiant lights, and the second blessing on the love of Torah. And one thereafter, which begins true and firm, emet ve'atziv, and in the evening one recites two blessings beforehand on the radiant lights and on the love of God, and two thereafter, the blessing of redemption, true and faithful, emet ve'emunah, and the blessing, help us lie down, hashikvenu Adonai, which is in the evening Shema. With regard to the blessing or the bedtime Shema, with regard to the blessing or the bracha, true and faithful, whether one recites it in its long formula or whether one recites it in its short formula, he fulfills the obligation. However, the general principle is where the sages said to recite a long blessing, one may not shorten it. And so too, wherever they said to recite a short blessing, one may not lengthen it. Where the sages said that a blessing must conclude with a second blessing at the end, he may not fail to conclude with that blessing. Similarly, if the sages said that a blessing must not conclude with the second blessing, one may not conclude with a blessing. This poses a big problem for us. A big problem. Why does it pose a big problem for us? Is because Judaism today has what's called Haredi, which is ultra-Orthodox. You have Orthodox, you have Masorti. Sorry, I wrote that wrong. So you have Masorti. Actually, before we can talk about Masorti, you have Conservadox, which is a weird Conservadox, a mixture or a line between being conservative and being Orthodox. And then after Conservadox, you have Reformed Judaism. No. Conservative. You have conservative, and then you go into the world of Reform Judaism. Reform Judaism is many places under the umbrella of Reform. You still have conservative. You have now Masor. Hold on, conservative. I'll put Masorti here, which is a hybrid between conservative and Reform. And then you have conservative here. Then you have progressive. This is where the LGBT community finds its shelter in progressive Judaism. And then you have other types of Judaism up until you get to a Judaism that is atheist. Jews that don't believe in God, but they believe in their Jewishness and blah, blah, blah. Okay? Which is weird. But they're all Jewish people, what can we say? Right? So these atheist ones go with philosophy a lot. I don't judge people. I don't say they're Jewish or not Jewish. I don't judge people. I see Jews are the same. I see good Jews and I see Jews that are struggling, sinners and saints, and good people. I don't judge people. So what am I trying to say here is that if you go into this conservative and progressive reform structure, it says here, where the sages said that a blessing must conclude with a second blessing at the end, he may not fail to conclude with a blessing. Similarly, the sages said that a blessing must not conclude, sages said that a blessing must not conclude with a second blessing. One may not conclude with a blessing. So what does this tell us? It tells us that if we look at these Haredi, Orthodox, Conservadox, here, the sages still matter. Okay, I'm not judging again, I'm just making a little bit of an indication that here I think the sages still matter, maybe here too, but I don't really know. I've never been to a conservative synagogue, I've never been around Masorti people, but from interacting with people I know, I'm going to put a question mark here. So what does this mean? It means that Judaism is a menu that we must choose. If you want to follow the sages, you're going to be here. If you want a Judaism that does not follow the sages, then your menu begins here and goes down like this. Because all of this Judaism going down does not follow the sages. And then after the atheist Jews, you just got non-religious people. Non-religious Jews, or just call them Zionists. They're all Jews, but they're just wayward people of God. They don't want to relate to their God. I don't know why, but you know, I'm not here to judge. Anyways, if you want the sages, this is Haredi, sometimes called ultra-Orthodox. Ultra-Orthodox. Personally, I told myself that I don't want to become ultra-Orthodox. But it's so funny because when I try to act out my Judaism, it looks more Haredi than even Orthodox. But this is where I like to be. Ideally, I'd like to be here. I don't want to become Haredi. I also don't want to become a Kabbalist. But I've noticed that every time I say I don't want to become something, I end up going there. Funny, but we'll see. You know, we'll see how God works it out. So I'm sharing this with you guys so that you can choose where in Judaism you want to be. Because the prayers, all the prayers of Reform Judaism, especially in Reform Judaism, the prayers in the Siddur are different. So here in the progressive and Reform movement, prayers are modified. They don't look like the way that the sages made them to be. They're modified. Even that I don't judge. I don't judge, because at the end of the day, we had a korban, a system of korbanot. We didn't have prayers with korbanot. But Ezra and the 70 elders, the most holy people of Israel, gave us a prayer book. So I'd like to use that prayer book, but there are always debates of whether it is binding or not. Can prayers be modified or not? Jews have different views, right? There's something called two Jews. The saying goes, 2 Jews, 3 opinions. Jews are tremendously opinionated people, and Jews are not good at listening. Jews are good at talking. So 2 Jews, 3 opinions. And this shows in the different denominations of Judaism, as I've illustrated here. But now I'm telling you that the prayers are modified. It doesn't mean that the prayers are wrong. They're just modified according to their own understanding, according to their own philosophy. All right? So they adjust the prayers according to what they believe. I don't want to judge, and I will not judge. But if you're like me, you understand that it's not easy to follow Orthodox Judaism. It's not easy. But you understand that the sages have weight. The sages were not just normal people. They knew what they were doing. Then you will probably end up, if you're lucky, in an Orthodox synagogue if they let you in to pray Orthodox prayers. I also, like the conservadox movements, a lot of conservative or conservadox have independent synagogues. They have independent synagogues, a lot. That makes it easy for someone to show up after their conversion and find a community and pray to God. Here it's a bit difficult. Only God can get you in here, literally. I won't even talk about Harei. But anyways, if the sages mean anything, then you will stick to those choices. However, we have a problem and we have a situation among European Jews, because they're the ones with the infrastructure and the capital to establish synagogues in the cities. A lot of them don't allow people to come in based on, and I'm sorry to say, based on skin color, based on who they are, financial status, blah, blah, blah. And I hate to say this, but it's the way it is. But as one coming back to Judaism, you should not let this stop you from trying to go into the synagogue. In the Reform movement, you have the progressive synagogues. The progressive synagogue are open to everybody. This is the easiest way to convert to Judaism. They will let you in, you will pray, you will worship God, and you'll be blessed. I promise you, if you go to a progressive or even a Reform synagogue, you're not going to become the child of the devil. You're not going to be disconnected from God. You're not going to be disconnected from the Torah. You will have a different approach to the Torah and a different approach to the prayers, which is different. But the most important thing about going to a synagogue is to pray to God. I've been to a progressive synagogue, and I was absolutely blessed, because what I wanted to do was to worship God. That's all I want to do. So I'm showing you all these variations so that you can decide what kind of Jew you are becoming. Are you becoming ultra strict, somewhat strict, relaxed, too relaxed, ridiculously relaxed? It's up to you. The most important thing is to become Jewish and go back to your heritage. Notice that I did not mention Messianic Judaism. Here I did not mention Messianic Jews, because this is nothing but Hebrew Christianity. It's not Judaism. This is Hebrew Christianity. They might use Jewish things and Jewish language and Jewish Torah or whatever. It's Christianity. I'm sorry to say. I used to be in there. I know how it's like, and that's why I left. Because I just wanted to leave everything that reminds me of Christianity. I wanted to come back to the Torah. But anyways, the reason why I'm telling you this is because the Mishnah says what the sages have said, that's the law. Don't change it. It is a mitzvah by Torah law to mention the exodus from Egypt at night. But some held that this mitzvah was like the phylacteries or ritual fringes fulfilled only during the day or night. For this reason, it was decided the exodus from Egypt is mentioned at night, adjacent to the recitation of the Shema. Rabbi ben Elazar ben Azariah said, I am approximately 70 years old, and although I have long held this opinion, I was never privileged to prevail and prove that there is a biblical obligation to fulfill the custom the accepted custom, and have the exodus from Egypt mentioned at night, until Ben Zoma interpreted it homiletically and proved it obligatory. Ben Zoma derived it as stated, that you may remember the day you went out of the land of Egypt all the days of your life. This is Deuteronomy 16 verses 3. The days of your life refers to daytime alone, it says. However, in addition to the word all, as it is stated, all the days of your life come to add nights as well. And the rabbis who posit that there is no biblical obligation to mention the exodus from Egypt at night explain the word all differently and say the days of your life refer to the days in this world. All is added to include the days of Mashiach. So this is already very loaded and very pregnant with ideas. So day and night, it reminds us of the sentence Bayom u Balayla. Why this phrase, Bayom u Balayla? Actually, I think here there has to be a wow. Bayom u Balayla. It means by day and by night. By day, by night. Why is it important to remember by day and by night when it says that we have to recite the day or remember the day that we went out of Egypt? So in other words, the sages are teaching us that we have to remember Pesach every night. And this is obviously, you can find this in the Siddur, thanking God who took us out of Egypt. But why do we have to remember coming out of Egypt by day or by night? It's because in Egypt, we did not have the privilege to study the Torah during the day. In Egypt, we did not have the privilege and opportunity to study the Torah by night, because the Pharaoh kept the people of Israel working day and night, giving them no chance to have children or to make children, no chance to study Torah, no chance to worship God, no chance to pray. So now we are expected to study Torah by day. You must study the Torah by day. And you must study the Torah by night. Beyomi balayla. At the same time as you study the Torah, you must pray during the night, and you must also pray during the day, because it's a privilege, because in Egypt we couldn't do it. Most importantly, you have to recite salvation, Pesach, coming out of Egypt, the salvation. We have to remember the salvation by day, and we have to remember the salvation from Egypt by night. So the next time we don't feel like studying Torah or praying or doing anything spiritual day or night, we must remember that we were once slaves and we couldn't do this. So the rabbis say we must remember Deuteronomy 16:3, that we came out of Egypt every night, and they've made provision for us in the Siddur to remember this. And it says here, and the rabbis will posit that there's no biblical obligation to mention the Exodus from Egypt at night, explain the word all differently, and say the days of your life refers to the days in this world, all as added to include rather the days of Mashiach. So we will never stop remembering our salvation. People who go around saying, hey, why are you Jewish? Are you crazy? Are you losing your salvation by going back to Judaism? No, we are not losing our salvation. The real salvation is in Judaism. So God saved the people of Israel once and for all in Egypt, saved in Egypt, or rather saved from Egypt. And our salvation continues into Olam Haba, into the world to come. The world is not yet saved. The world will only be saved here when the Geula happens. So they can go around telling each other they are saved in the name of a dead Jew. Doesn't work. Salvation, their salvation will be by God's favor, that the Geula, the nations, and when they go into Olam Haba, they will experience a redemption. But us, we will continue as the children of Israel to remember the Exodus forever. Because that was a great salvation. That's where God set us aside to restore us, to be able to study Torah bayom uvalayla, to study and pray bayom uvalayla, to remember where we come from bayom uvalayla. Hashem bless you and keep you. I will see you in the next video when we do chapter 2 of Berachot 1.